PB, Peebles, Princess of the Gum World, Bonnibel, or her most well-known name, Princess Bubblegum, is the dictator of the Candy Kingdom and the smartest person in OO and probably in the world. But before she was the most resourceful ruler on Earth, she started out as just a droplet from the Mother Gum, an origin point for our princess who was harmless and couldn't even speak. However, along with her came her candy brother, who, in her own words, was a weirdo that needed protection since anything could scare him and is not a creature that would ever fight back. At some point afterwards, Princess Bubblegum became lonely since she was immortal and her brother wasn't the talkative type. So she made her own family made of bubblegum as well, though that didn't turn out well for PB because that family of creation then wanted to betray her by trying to give her dum-dum juice that would have turned her into a dumb piece of candy. But that plan failed, as instead it was her creations that succumbed to the dum-dum juice, turning them into familiar candy people that Adventure Time fans would remember quite well. It was from that point that Bonnibel decided to become the Princess of the Candy Kingdom, vowing to protect her candy people by whatever means necessary. But this quest to protect the people of her kingdom, to prevent herself from ever being lonely again, brought a person, a leader, who would need to be smarter than anyone who would dare threaten her and the Candy Kingdom. Now, in the beginning, PB was someone who was always saved by Finn, the human, from the likes of the Ice King, but eventually as the series went on, the princess began to defend herself more and more. Her technology developed into insanity, technology that was foreign and unparalleled in this world completely. So advanced that it seemed like at times magic, more than anything else spawning from science. However, PB hated magic, seeing it as just science people didn't understand. But on to the actual tech itself that our prodigy engineer can and has already created. She has the multi-mode gun, which has many ways of making itself useful. One mode shoots more generic beams of energy that could harm these things. Battery mode that can literally transform anything into a battery. To what extent can this work on more beings? I'm not sure. Tunnel mode that basically shoots a huge beam that's meant to shoot at the ground or wall to create a tunnel for her to enter through. As you can imagine, this would probably vaporize most creatures. Then we have an unnamed mode that allows Princess to fire a beam that when it touches the target, allows her to simply hold them in place, making the target not able to move at all. This is especially impressive as it was used on a vampire, a creature that should be stronger than whatever PB is at this point. She also has another mode that allows her to shoot wooden stakes, obviously only really useful for vampires, but this mode seems to imply the idea that PB can simply make the gun shoot literally whatever she wants, or at least whatever she has at her disposal in the first place, and then somehow program it into the gun itself. Could she program, let's say, an explosive missile or something else more potent for more diverse amounts of enemies or situations? Well, it's impossible to say, but similar to other gadgets and inventions I'll be getting to later in the video, it's really worth thinking about the ramifications of inventions and what she could possibly do with them if used by someone creative and more bloodlusted, perhaps. Anyway, then get this, the final notable mode of this weapon alone is the ability to make the gun shoot another gun. A perfect copy of the same gun with most likely the same modes and settings as the original. Now with her army of candy people, imagine what military force she could produce and wield if she shot out enough copies of this gun to all of them. Now it's worth mentioning that this wasn't a thing in the war at the end of the series, so it probably means there were limitations to the copyability of the weapon, or maybe the writers just forgot about it, who knows. I don't like saying things like that since I think it's cheap, but it is of course something worth thinking about. Probably a similar sentiment I might share for other gadgets later on, but again, the point of the video is what Princess Bubblegum could do based on what the series has shown us. So moving on from the multi-mode gun, you got the ray gun, which seems to be stronger than the generic beam from the multi-mode gun. There's also an X-ray gun, which grants her the ability to let her see the interior properties of her targets, which could be useful for finding weak points if needed. Somewhat similar to the infrared scope from the game Resident Evil 4, where you could shoot the weak points of a monster, for example. There's also the idea that maybe she could give her enemy cancer or something, though she would probably have to design the gun more in that direction, and then when used she could flee and wait for them to die or something like that. Now, of the last guns I feel is worth mentioning is a simple wrist-mounted missile launcher that could surprise enemies if she hid it under her sleeves. Flame Princess, who dodged it, didn't seem to want to get hit by it, so it must be something. Speaking of Flame Princess, there was an episode where she was actually trying to attack Princess Bubblegum, but PB showed off even more gadgets in the same scene where she used a force field of some kind to completely deflect FP's fireballs like nothing. Then FP shot at fire gets a potential like from Bleach and flings PB into a wall. However, the force field completely negates the damage from an attack that would most likely kill the likes of Finn and Jake. This is the same technology used to protect herself against Golb, the god of chaos and final boss of the series, or more so his monstrous minions when they crushed her with their bare hands. While the force field didn't negate all the damage like with Flame Princess, it seemed to give her similar durability to Jake's final form, who took a similar attack and took almost the same exact amount of damage, both characters being left in a crater. These same gold monsters can overpower the Gumball Guardians, who themselves can somewhat wrestle an amped Lich who was inside Princess Bubblegum's body, who need both the Ice King and Finn working together just to take him down. As for other force fields, PB can throw one that can block those varmint creatures from getting in. Anybody with any creativity can see how useful that could be. Then you see similar technology later on in the Obsidian special when she seals in Larvo with a force field that can completely block his attacks. Also moving on from force fields, the princess also has travel related stuff like hover disc, a jetpack, and even hover boots that could help her get out of situations or just keep her distance. She also has zoom goggles so she can see the enemy from far, and even invisibility tech on top of that. Stacking all of those for sure would allow her to create great strategies against whatever opponent PB could go up against. In terms of healing related tech, she also has a Spoon of Prosperity, which works as a Sensu Bean from Dragon Ball, which completely heals her, which could come in handy if the enemy got the jump on her somehow. Lastly, Bonnie has the earrings that gives her, or anyone else wearing them, resistance to the Lich's mind control magic, which mainly works via speech. However, when they are activated, they seem to make a bubble wrap around the user's head, which could imply that any magic of any kind could get resisted or negated if the magic involves traveling to the target's head, like their ears, mouth, nose, or eyes. So if someone like Itachi Uchiha from Naruto, who could mess with your head if you were to look into his eyes, tried performing his jutsu on PB, his magic wouldn't be able to work since this bubble would protect her against it. Another example would be Satoru Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen, who could send so much information to your brain to the point that you could be brain dead. But PB's earrings and necklace can probably just block all magical information from entering her head. So moving on from Princess Bubblegum's gadgets altogether, it's now time I talk about her actual magical abilities. While I think this is actually not all too impressive, it wouldn't be a proper Bubblegum video if I didn't go into it at least a bit. Starting off, since she is the embodiment of the 4 elements of the universe, candy, which basically translates to life, since sugar is in all life, she basically has the potential to manipulate or affect all life in the universe, but for now, the princess hasn't showed that potential in terms of feats, and is very limited compared to what her intelligence can do for her. In terms of what is shown on screen, she can shoot beams of jelly beans out of her hands, which can knock down buildings. Bonnibel can also shoot out soda and mint, which she can combine to make explosives strong enough to break St. Pim's ice. St. Pim being stronger than the Ice King, who can also battle Flame Princess to a standstill. PB can also use streams of soda to destroy Gulb Owls, which should most likely be stronger than the varmints that I presented earlier. Aside from using that to slow her descent in case she's ever falling and has no tech for some reason, that's about it in terms of feats with her magic. It's not much, but one can argue that she doesn't really try to train or enhance herself because she still mainly relies on attack, thus limiting her potential as an elemental to stand as an equal to the likes of the Ice King or Flame Princess in terms of lethality. However, that being said, that's just PB's magic in base, not her actual elemental form. Her elemental form is completely different beast. In the elemental arc, PB transforms and becomes a giant mountain made of gum or something, entities similar to Mother Gum, where she originally spawned from. In this state, she can simply sing and then transform anybody in the area into candy people from just pure hacks alone. While the other elementals are powerful as well, Bonnibel still manages to overpower them, turning even other elemental beings into candy as well. On top of that, if someone manages to touch her, they'll also start to turn into candy as well. She can also probably control everyone she turns into candy too. Elemental PB states that she's connected to all candy in the galaxies, though what that means for power scaling is unclear. At most, it just gives her some sort of weird clairvoyance, specifically for candy throughout the universe. This could have scaling implications, but I'll get to that in the scaling section. Speaking of which, let's move on from tech and magic and get to the scaling. So to preface this part, I need to state that there's a more lowball or conservative scaling for PB and AT as a whole. But there's also a more highball interpretation or higher meta of scaling for Bubblegum as well, and I'll be covering each one and you could pick or accept whichever one you like more. Starting off near the beginning of the series, PB can scale to Jake the dog since she seems to do damage to him, this Jake having a small building level calc. Then later on, Princess Bubblegum fights Abracadaniel and it beats him up. This is the same dude who can take a meteor landing on him directly and surviving, which has been calced to be Small City Plus. Then later on, she managed to cut Finn with a pair of scissors and draw blood from him. Finn around this time can either scale to the Abracadaniel calc I just mentioned, or can scale to the Ice King, who has a calc putting one of his ice storms at large mountain level. Though scaling the princess to this level perhaps can seem dubious, but it is an option. This video is just laying out possible scaling options for everyone of their choosing. I'm mainly just trying to educate and present ideas the princess could do or attempt with her attack once again. So anyway, you also got Finn, who, with the telekinetic arm, punched PB in the face, and while knocked unconscious for a moment, she only walked away from the attack with a black eye. You could argue Finn wasn't going full power or going for the kill, but since he enlarged his arm at this moment, it's obvious this punch is stronger than if he'd punched her with his regular fist. Then in Bonnibel's elemental form, she's definitely above Finn, or even elemental fire Finn, both of which are strong enough to fight Fern, the grass clone of Finn. Fern, who as the grass sword itself can damage and cut this thing. This thing called Orgalorg is known as the Eater of Worlds. He eats planets for a living. Thus, this scaling chain can put elemental form PB at planet level, which is fine, considering there's nothing contradicting the idea that she could just take over the whole planet with her singing if she wished to or were more in a rush to. You also got Finn in an alternate universe who uses the Ice Crown to its full potential and freezes over the whole planet, which that feat isn't planet level itself and is more like moon level, but nonetheless, using elemental power to its full potential seems to put any user on that celestial body tier of power. Obviously, it's fair to say that a pure elemental like Bubblegum in this state should be at least equal to or above this Ice Crown. So anyway, you got earlier in the series PB scaling to like small building, then later half, you got like large mountain if you accept her scaling to Finn, who scales to the Ice King storms. Then in elemental form, she's like planet level. Lastly, as a note here for durability, with the large mountain level scaling, for example, this would mean that her Forcefields from earlier would be way above that level and maybe be around planet level if they could make PB survive a direct hit from a Gulb creature. Okay, all that was the conservative or lowball scaling for Princess Bubblegum. Now we're gonna go for the highball interpretations, or what I call the good stuff. So in Adventure Time, there's another scaling meta that actually goes as far as multiversal level, which Princess Bubblegum can scale to as well. The arguments for a multiversal Princess Bubblegum are to be derived from the Enchiridion, basically a databook for Adventure Time. First off, the whole verse or cosmology of AT is multiversal as stated here. You got the cosmic imagination and how people can dream entire universes into existence, similar to how an old man dreams Prismo into existence, etc, etc. I can go more into detail about the actual multiversal feats, but I'm gonna try and aim for stuff that's more relevant to PB and to make this video not too long, and maybe I can go more into it in another video. So how PB scales to this is a few ways. You got the Catalyst Comet, which is able to end all of existence or destroy all of reality, it having the power of the universe inside it. Orgalorg went on to absorb some of its power, which if we're talking about universal, multiversal power, if you have a piece of infinite power, then you still have infinite power. Finn went on to then damage Orgalorg with the Grass Sword, and then essentially fight the embodiment of the Grass Sword later on and win, making Finn himself scale. From there, you can just remember Finn punching PB, with PB surviving the punch, which should make her scale. Also, to add on to this point, Finn's dad actually merged himself with the comet, which basically made him merge himself with the universe and the cosmic imagination as a whole as well, which is multiversal in size. Now, the second main reason PB scales that I'd bring up is that there's Gulb, which is stated to be the strongest force in the multiverse, who had its minions that obviously had a piece of its power, then hit the princess. She survived the hit with her force field, again, another reason for her to scale. Then PB's weapons and overall tech should scale or upscale from the princess herself. All that being said, that's the multiversal meta in a quick summary and how it relates to Bonnie herself. You can interpret her as more building level, mountain level, planet, or even multiversal. I'm just here to present the arguments. In speed, Princess Bubblegum managed to land a hit on Jake, who is comparable to Finn. Finn is able to deflect lightning bolts from the Ice King, thus making PB around massively hypersonic plus, or lightning speed. You also got her beating up Abracadaniel, like I mentioned earlier, who he himself should be able to keep up with Finn and the Ice King and other wizards. Then later on, Finn is sent at FTL speeds towards Mars and is able to perceive everything going on and is able to turn his body while on his way, giving him faster than light speed. The Vampire King is comparable or faster than Finn, which Marceline can fight at even turns and react to the Vampire King's attacks. Then in the Varmints episode I showed earlier when I spoke of the multi-mode gun, you got PB keeping up with Marceline quite easily, thus making the princess scale to Finn and thus giving her FTL speed as well. And for now, I think I gave everyone a good idea of what Princess Bubblegum is capable of. I really only made this video because the comments on my Adventure Time tier list videos screamed at me about how I downplay the princess, but you know, they failed to realize I didn't include prep time or anything like that, which would of course make her crazy strong. I also changed my scaling since then, but it's still fair to say that me not including prep time heavily nerfed Princess Bubblegum quite a lot. Anyway, like the video, and subscribe if you like this sort of content and want me to make more Princess Bubblegum videos, Adventure Time videos, or anything else really. This has been Galvino, peace out.
And Finn, sincerely, thank you for defending our kingdom again. Oh, someone else wants to thank you too.
Thank you, Finn.
I don't know. Okay,